Hi, it's Celeste from Flowing Otter Marketing, and in this tutorial we're going to be talking about inserting tables in your website using your content management system. The tool that we're going to be using for this tutorial is right up there in your editing toolbar, the one that looks like a little spreadsheet, of course, and that's a table. So what I want to point out, though, before we even get into this, is there are a couple of different purposes for using this tool. First of all, of course, if you need to just insert a table, you want to align your content in a column, and you're unable to do that using the standard tools. If you want things to be in rows and columns, this is a way to do that. We're going to talk about how to do that multi-cell table that's much like a spreadsheet. There also is another purpose that we can use this for, and that would be to create a single cell which ultimately acts like a text box. If you need to just make one item or one block of text stand out, this is a way to do that. So let's jump in first and create a multi-cell table, which is the traditional use for the table tool. So I'm just going to stick with the 3 rows, and let's make it 3 columns. Let's look at the width now. Typically, most people aren't really accustomed with working with the pixel measurement, so you may want to click that drop down and go with a percentage. If you selected 100%, that would be 100% of that workable, editable area. That would mean that your table is going to span the full width of your working area that the CMS has access to. In this case, let's just make it 75% width, and we can play with that later. The height, you don't need to set that because that is actually going to scale up and down based on what you put in the box. So however many lines of text you put in there, or if you insert an image in there, it will expand to accommodate whatever you need. Now you can put in an absolute height if you would like to in pixels. That's the only way you can measure the height is in pixels, but understand that you won't be able to get that box to contract without coming back to this properties dialog. So I would suggest you not set an absolute height until you really become comfortable with using the pixels measurement. Moving down here on the left side, you see border. This says 1. That means there would, by default, be a 1 pixel border, 1 pixel width border drawn around this box and around all the cells within the box. If you were to say 4, if you were to change that to 4, that would be a 4 pixel width border, which will be a slightly thicker line. If you changed that to 0, that would mean that there is no visible border. And there may very well be times that you want that. You may not want to see all the dividing lines between the cells. You may just want to have that information contained in those cells and have the lines be invisible. So we'll demonstrate that in a moment as well. I just wanted to point it out to you what all these settings are that you're going to want to set. But for right now, we're going to use a 1 pixel border. Cell spacing and cell padding. I'm going to use the illustration of packing your wine glasses in a box. So I want you to imagine, if you will, that you're packing a series of glasses into a box. The cell spacing, if you think of each cell as the container, the little mini container inside your box that holds a glass, cell spacing is the amount of space between all of the cells. Cell padding is what you actually wrap around each glass, so between the walls of the cell and the object it contains. This is going to make a lot more sense in just a minute when you actually see that in action. The alignment tells your table where you want it to be set. Do you want it to be, by default, it is left aligned on the page or in your viewing area. Do you want that to be center aligned? Let's go ahead and select that just so you can see how that works. We're going to go ahead and say OK and let it draw that table for us. So there's your 3 by 3 table. You can, with your 1 pixel border, you can insert whatever you need in there. Whether it be text or images. As you type, it's going to try to accommodate that, and I'm going to show you how to align that in just a moment. But you can see how you could just insert anything in here. If you've already done the tutorial on adding and editing images, you know that you could use this image tool up here to insert an image in any one of those boxes as well. But I'm just going to double click on this table again, and it's going to, well, it's being a little bit stubborn, so I will just right click, and you can see the table properties dialog box will pop up again. So this brings up that same dialog box you were using just a moment ago so that you can change those properties if you've changed your mind. So let's look at the difference between, previously we had 1 pixel of cell spacing. Let's change that to 0, and you can see, as you can see, there's no space now between those cells, the cells being each one of the little boxes. So if we then change the cell padding, that means we're going to be creating more space around the content. So as you can see here behind the table properties box, you can see that the text is kind of jammed right up against the edge of the cell. If we were to create some padding around the contents of that cell, like let's say that we created a 5 pixel padding, as you can see, it pushed the walls of the cell out a little bit so there's space around your contents. Let's go back and change the, I just right clicked over the table and got the table properties box again. Let's change the cell spacing also to 5 pixels, and you can see how different that looks. So within that table though, you might very well want to edit just a specific cell. So again, I am right clicking over the table and I get this shortcut menu. If you will hover over the cell menu, this is how you're going to go back and edit individual cells. And you'll see a flyout menu there for the cells. Then you will want to click on the cell properties menu. I know this might sound a little confusing, but after you do this once or twice, it's going to become second nature to you. So from this box, from this dialog box, this is where you can go in where I mentioned before that you could set the width of the cells, because otherwise it's just going to try to slide the size of those cells, the width of the cells, to accommodate whatever is in them. So here, if you wanted to select a percentage, let's say that very first column on the left, that cell, you wanted that to be just a small percentage, so you want that just to be 25%. So you can see I changed this from pixels to percent. I want that to be 25% width, and let's say that I want the contents of that cell to be center aligned. Okay, so that's easy to do there with the cell properties box. You also can do a couple of other things, like select a background color. Let's say I wanted that one cell to stand out, so I would choose a background color, and I'm going to choose that light yellow color. All right, let's click OK, and there you can see that it actually did take all of those commands and change that content to center alignment and change the background color. Again, I'm going to right click over that and get my cell menu and go to cell properties, because let's say that I changed my mind and said, gosh, I want that cell to be the same color as all of them. So I'm going to click that choose background color box, select clear, OK, and there we go. So it's just the same color as all of the other boxes again. So that's how you'll go in and you will edit the properties of an individual cell, whether that be color, width, and alignment, and so forth. Let's say, though, that you were looking at this row and you've got all of your content in there and you've got it configured the way you want it to be, but you decided, you know what, I want to put a header row above that. I want to put another row above that and be able to label each of these columns. If you will right click over the table again, now we've been using the cell flyout menu. If you'll hover over the row flyout menu, you can see that you have an option here to insert a row before. And as you can see, it just inserted a row just that easily. So I could go in and type in my headings here. That one's going to be an item, this is going to be a description, and so on. So it's just that easy. You also then, from that same flyout menu of the rows, you can actually delete a row. Very handy. Again, each time I'm accessing those menus, it's just by right-clicking over the table, and I get the table shortcut menu. One thing that you're going to want to know before you start creating tables within your website, that right-click shortcut menu is also the only way that you're going to be able to delete a table. You won't be able to just select it with your mouse and click delete. This is the only way you can remove a table, because that, by selecting and clicking, that will only delete the contents. The table will still be there. So this is how you will right click and select delete table, and there it is, it's gone. The other kind of table that I mentioned at the beginning of the tutorial was a single cell table, or what on your website would look like a text box. So if you wanted to set some information apart, like let's say that you had a meeting coming up in a couple of days and you wanted to make sure that that was that information was readily available, that nobody missed it when they came onto your website, so you wanted to create that box, excuse me, you're going to go back and repeat many of those same steps. You're going to use your table icon, and in this case though, it's only going to be one row and one column. I'm going to go back and use the percent tool again rather than the absolute pixel width, and in this case we're going to make that, let's say, 85% of that width. I'm going to have, let's make it a 3 pixel border. I don't need any cell spacing because the cell, it's just a single cell, so I don't need any spacing between the cells, but I am going to change that padding to, let's say, 10. I want a little bit more space around the contents of that. Click OK, and there it is. So I'm looking at that, and of course you can see immediately there's a thicker border around that, but I look at that and say, gosh, you know what? I really did intend to make that center aligned. Well, in that case, all I did was double click the table itself, and it brought up the properties box again, or you can right click and get that menu as well. And I can go back and change those properties to make the table itself center aligned. So let's say I put in my meeting notice, and this is going to be my date and time information, and so forth. Now I want to center align this, so you can see you can go back and format the text all by itself. If you don't want that entire cell center aligned, you can align just the text, just like you were formatting any text on your site. And I want that bolded, and let's say I want that to be a little bit larger font, so I'm going to jump on that. There we go, and I've got my date and time notice, and I click away and say, gosh, you know, that border is a little bit annoying. I'm going to go back and I'm going to edit those cell properties again. I'm right clicking to get that shortcut menu, clicking cell properties. I'm going to go back and see what that would look like if I put a little bit of background color behind that. Let's just click that blue. Click OK. Oh, well, that's completely annoying. That's really bright color, and that's just not going to look at all good with my website design. So I'm going to go back to right click, get my cell, my flyout menu, cell properties, and I'm going to choose the background color tool, and I'm going to clear that. Say OK. Well, that's better, but I may just want to have that be a floating box and have nobody be able to see the lines. Well, again, I'm going to go back to my table properties box, and here I'm going to make that border property a 0. So there you have it. That's how to create your tables and text boxes on your website using your CMS. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, as always, just contact us. Thanks.